Hello, everyone. Let's subscribe to Relationship Stories before we forget. Today's story is about a wife's disrespect and betrayal, and a husband's calculated revenge. After 16 years of marriage, Ron discovers a devastating secret about his wife, and the way he chooses to handle it will shock you. Keep watching to see how far he goes to reclaim his life.
It was a miserable winter day in mid-Ohio. The wind howled, carrying snow and sleet from the northwest, and I could feel the flu creeping in. I'm a carpenter, and we were working on framing a house on a windswept rise. With spring break approaching, I had been working overtime to save money for a family trip to Panama City, Florida. Money had been tight since we bought the big new house that my wife, Nell, had to have. I had dreams of a peaceful family trip, though admittedly the thought of watching college co-eds on the beach was part of my R&R fantasy. That day, I felt like death warmed over. My head pounded, and I was freezing despite the layers I wore. The foreman took one look at me and told me to go home before I caught pneumonia. Gratefully, I climbed into my old truck and headed home. I thought about calling my wife, but even that seemed like too much effort. Before I continue, let me give you some context. My name is Ron Harding. I'm 36 years old, 6 foot, about 220 pounds, a little heavy, but I enjoy my beer. I've been married to Nell, the love of my life, for 16 years. We met in high school, married young, and started our family soon after. Nell works part-time at a doctor's office, bringing in some extra money for the family. She's not glamorous, but to me, Nell is beautiful in her own way. She's 5 feet 4 inches, weighs around 140 pounds, and even after 2 kids, she still has a body that gets me going. As I pulled into the garage, I noticed our car was gone, which meant Nell was probably out shopping. Stumbling into the house, I made my way upstairs, looking forward to a hot shower. I noticed the bed was unmade, which was odd. Nell was a stickler for keeping the house neat. Something about it didn't sit right with me, but I was too tired to think about it. I started stripping off my clothes when I noticed something: wet spots on the bottom sheet. My heart sank as I reached out to touch the stain. It was wet and felt slimy. I brought my finger to my nose and the smell hit me, feminine and laced with something that wasn't mine. In that moment, my entire world shifted. It wasn't my scent. We hadn't been intimate in over a week. My brain, muddled by fever and exhaustion, struggled to process what this meant. The signs were all there. Nell had been unfaithful. I was livid. Too angry to think straight, I decided to take a shower, hoping the hot water would help clear my head. But as the water warmed my chilled skin, my thoughts churned in an angry loop. I couldn't escape the image of that bed. It wasn't just about the physical act. It was about trust, about everything I thought we had built over 16 years of marriage. After drying off, I made up my mind. I moved my things out of our bedroom into the guest room, just in time to hear the garage door open. Nell was home, and I wasn't ready to face her yet. I heard her and someone else talking downstairs before she hurried up the steps.
"Oh, you're home,"
she said, looking pale as she saw me moving clothes into the guest room.
"I had to rush to school. Brad's sick. Are you all right?"
No, I don't want to give you the flu. I'm sure you don't want to pass anything from me to your lover. Her face drained of color.
"What do you mean?"
she stammered. Go look at the bed, Nell, and tell me that isn't what I think it is. Her shoulders slumped as she sagged against the wall. Tears welled up in her eyes.
"I didn't want you to find out like this."
There it was, confirmation. I told her that we wouldn't be talking until I recovered from my illness, but she better be prepared with an explanation when the time came. As I shut the guest room door, the weight of betrayal settled over me. That night, I woke up in darkness, disoriented at first. Hunger gnawed at my stomach, so I slipped downstairs for something to eat. As I sat at the kitchen table trying to process everything, Nell appeared in the doorway, looking like she had spent the entire day crying.
"Can we talk now? I'll try to explain."
I nodded and she admitted what I already suspected. It was John, her boss, the doctor she worked for. "Do you love him?" She hesitated, then whispered.
"I don't know."
That broke me. 16 years of marriage, 2 children, and here she was, not knowing if she loved another man. The rage I felt earlier returned in full force.
I still love you, Ron. I don't know. He's in a tough spot too. He has a family. We can't leave our lives behind, but we need each other.
I could hardly believe what I was hearing. She wanted me to accept this, her fling, while I continued to work and support her. The audacity of it all made my blood boil.
I talked to a lawyer yesterday, and he said a divorce would be expensive for you. Alimony, child support, custody. It might be better if you just let this go until it fades away.
Do you really expect me to sit back and let you continue seeing another man while I work to support this lifestyle?
I'm sure you'll see sense once you talk to a lawyer. Maybe this is the best solution for us both.
Her calmness in that moment was like a slap in the face. The woman I loved, who I thought loved me, was asking me to stand by and let her destroy everything we built. My rage nearly consumed me. Tomorrow I'll get my own lawyer. Let's see what they say. But make no mistake, I won't accept this. I'll never take you back after what you've done. You've broken our marriage. I could see the wheels turning in her mind as she nodded calmly. She thought she'd already won.
I hope you'll reconsider. This is just a fling, Ron. When it's over, I'll be ready to be your wife again. Until your next fling comes around, and how could I ever trust you again?
Her only response was a cold goodnight before she turned and walked away. In that moment, my mind was made up. The next day, I didn't wait around. I made sure everything was in place and left without a word. I quit my job, informed her boss's wife about their affair, and let her deal with the fallout. She lost her job at the doctor's office soon after, and her lover was dragged through a public, well-advertised divorce. They never saw each other again after that. Nell struggled to find work and ended up as a cashier in a supermarket. With no money, she lost the house, the car, and all the furniture she had so desperately wanted. She ended up in a cheap apartment with no chance of finding another man to support her, since she couldn't even afford to divorce me. My parents took in the kids and I made sure they were well cared for. I sent money for their college savings and kept in touch through calls and cards. The bond they built with my parents was stronger than ever, and they turned out to be responsible adults, learning about loyalty and trust the hard way. 7 years later, I returned home briefly to see my children. They had long since lost any affection for their mother, and Nell had never recovered their love. While in town, I went to the store where she still worked, standing at a cash register. I took my time, went through her line, and when she saw me, her face turned ashen. "Are you having a good life, Nell?" I asked, my voice low and sharp, cutting through the mundane sounds of the supermarket. Her eyes widened, and for a moment, it seemed like she couldn't breathe. Her face turned ghostly white, and I watched as the shock hit her like a sledgehammer. The years of regret, the weight of her choices, all seemed to crash down on her in that instant. Her lips trembled, as if trying to form a response, but no words came. She swayed on her feet, her hand reaching out instinctively to grip the counter, but it was too late. Her body gave in to the overwhelming realization of everything she had lost. Her family, her dignity, her future. She collapsed, hitting the floor with a thud, eyes still locked on mine, filled with a mix of disbelief and sorrow. I didn't move. I didn't rush to her aid. I stood there for a moment, watching as she lay on the cold tiles, a mere shadow of the woman she once was. And then, with a sense of finality, I turned and walked away, leaving her behind, just like she had left me years ago. As I stepped outside into the fresh air, I felt lighter, freer. It was over. I never saw her again.
Did you think Ron made the right move? Let me have your thoughts in the comments. Also, let me know if you like one revenge or two happy ending better. That's the story I've shared with you today. What would you do if you were in Ron's position? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to check out my playlist for more similar stories.